Okay, hello, and welcome back to the podcast by Cruel Commons, where we discuss art, advertising, and culture. We're here today at the wonderful Cruel Commons office, studio, workspace, my second home. That was weird.
I sleep here
We
sometimes.
synced up there. And as always, beside me, to my right, to your left, stage right, is Julia Cherry. How are you today, Jules? What's going on?
I'm good. I'm fine.
We're really good.
I
It's
guess.
it's a Thursday.
Summer's over. We're sad.
Summer's over. It's lots of feelings, but it's a good day. We had some pizza. I spilled it on my pants right before the shoot, which was great.
Yeah. But we're happy with who we have on the couch today.
Yeah, very excited. We have another amazing guest here today. Why don't you intro, since I've been speaking so much on these podcasts that I can't stand to watch them back myself. That would be great if you could kick this one off.
I'm very excited. I've been trying to get this guest on the podcast since 2021.
Yes, she's been hard to get.
Hard to get.
reach.
Plain hard to get. Jeez. Anyways, she has spent most of her career in the marketing industry, specifically the CPG space. She's worked with some of the largest household names such as Snapple Spiked, Mott's Clamato, and by now Smirnoff. She manages basically 360 marketing campaigns. So everything from digital to shopper to PR to XM. Welcome to the podcast, the brand manager of Smirnoff at Diageo, Kassandra Falvo.
Woo!
Thanks,
Welcome,
guys.
Cass.
What's going on?
Thanks for having me.
How are things? Thanks for coming down.
Thanst for coming finally. It's
Any excuse to come to
only
the
been
Cruel
2
office.
years.
It's always a
since
good
we've
time.
asked.
So why did you snub us on the last podcast?
I actually don't even remember. When you said that, I'm like, what? What do
She
you
had
mean
a
I couldn't
prior
come?
commitment.
Okay.
Prior commitment.
I remember you guys asking me, but then, I had something going on. But I'm honored to be here today.
We won't hold it against you.
I don't remember what
I
was
will
going
hold
on,
it
but-
against you, and I'm going to ask hard-pressed questions because
that's
of
the
it.
first of the hard questions here today. Honestly, with that intro, you sound like one of the marketing Avengers.
I know, that was very generous.
It's quite
Thanks,
the intro.
guys.
I
I
love
don't-
to hype everyone up on this.
I don't think it was generous enough, to be honest with you. No, we're
Take
very,
two.
very excited to chat today. Obviously, the purpose of the podcast is to really talk about marketing, talk about culture, talk about, kind of your role in your job and kind of give some insight to the crowd out there for those watching about, what you do and who you are. So, Jules,
I
let's
mean,
kick
I
it
guess
off.
first, tell us a bit about yourself, who you are, your career up to this point, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Where do I even start? So a little bit about me. I grew up outside of the city. I'm a suburbs girl, tried and true suburbs girl, but I do love coming down here.
Shout out suburbs.
So I grew up in Bolton, Caledon area.
Nice.
Grew up in a small town, did a lot of competitive dance growing up. That was really my passion.
Show us a move.
No.
Josh,
I shouldn't have said anything about
Josh, the audio guys, nixed the moves.
Don't move
Yeah.
from your mic.
Did you do aggro back in the day? I had a lot of
Acro, you mean?
aggro. Is that it?
Aggro?
Acro. You mean acro?
Acro?
Acrobatics.
Is that it?
Oh
is
my
it
God.
acro? Is it short for
Aggro is
acrobatics?
like an
Acrobatics.
angry man.
Honestly, no.
No.
I was not good at acro.
That's fair. You know what?
I did more like ballet, jazz, tap. Tap was my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting a
So-
sample after this. We'll
Okay.
save that for the post podcast look.
Okay.
I like that.
So I was really into that growing up. And then even in high school, I went to an arts high school for
Nice.
dance. So that was a big part of my life. That's where I met a lot of my good friends, still today. And then moving on from there, I went to university at Laurier. Growing up in a small town, I really wanted to go to a university that was a little bit more small town vibes. At the time, Laurier was smaller. Now I feel like it's blown up and everyone goes there.
Yeah.
I originally thought I wanted to go to Western, but like touring that campus, is that where you went?
Yeah, who would
Oh,
want to
yeah.
go to Western? It's just like no one would really want to do that. That's
Go Stangs. Go
same.
Stangs.
No one that really is like all straight up there is really.
I
Gonna
think
go
I've
to
said ghost
Western.
stangs on every single one of these
Yeah, can we
podcasts.
get-
I didn't know you went to Western.
I have to exit myself.
We've had too many ghost stangs. There's been multiple ghost stangs, so I'm glad that we have a non-Western grad here today.
No. After I toured Western, I'm like, this is way too big for me. Like, I need something a little bit more low key. So yeah, the reason why I went to Laurier though is because I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I feel like it's so hard in high school. I feel like that's something everyone can relate to. Yeah, like grade 11 and 12, you have no idea. I thought maybe I wanted to be a teacher, so I was gonna maybe do like a psych or sociology degree. I can't even say that word. But then I ended up choosing business because it's like obviously very generic. So figured I could go into multiple different avenues with that.
Nice.
And the reason why I chose Laurier was just because they had a co-op program. So I figured, okay, I'd get to try a few different, career paths within business before graduating. So that's what I did. And that's how I fell into marketing because that's where I did my first internship. Was in brand marketing, really loved it.
Where was that first internship at?
That was at Canada Dry Mott's, which is now
nice.
Keurig Dr.
Okay.
Pepper.
Yeah, wicked. Shout out KDP.
Yeah, shout out KDP. And then I've stayed in marketing ever since. Graduated. I actually did a post-grad as well at Humber in advertising. Cool. And then just stuck with marketing since then.
Nice. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's really interesting. I think that, it's not totally weird that you were thinking psych and then ended up in marketing because so much about marketing is psychology based. Like I have a lot of friends who have kind of taken that path because it is the same like school of thought. You're trying to figure out the psychology of the consumer and kind of get to that end point. How do we sell them on this? Let's get inside their head.
100%.
It doesn't always sound that ominous, but
well, do you want to tell us a bit about your career up to this point? I know you kind of just talked about Laurier and the school, but I mean just like from that internship up to where you are now?
Yeah, for sure. So I started my career back at Canada Dry Mott's or Keurig Dr. Pepper, whatever you want to call it. So I was lucky enough to have stayed in touch with some people over there during my internship. And then when I graduated, I kind of reached back out to do another internship, just like a short-term thing. My plan was graduate from my post-grad, go back there for a few months, travel, and then look for a job. But while I was doing my internship there, they had an opening for a full-time role. So I applied for that. And then I ended up staying there for like 5.5 years. Wow. So I started as an ABM, acronyms. CPG role is all
acronyms.
I do that
Associate brand manager.
When we have new people start, we have a whole presentation on acronyms. Yeah. It's like, just so you know, this is 15 slides of acronyms. Like, pay attention.
And sometimes you don't even know what they stand for. You just know what they mean, you know?
Oh, 100%.
I have no idea what the real words are.
Yeah, exactly.
And we on the previous episode, we're like, we don't talk like marketing people. And then we're out here like, just straight acronyms.
Exactly.
I love it. Exactly. No, but ABM is a great role to start at. And then you kind of climb the ladder from there.
Assistant brand manager,
exactly.
Brand manager, we'll put it up.
Exactly.
ABM, yeah.
So I was working on Mott's Clamato with some of the team here, which was a lot of fun. Julia, and Dom.
Yeah.
You were involved. Yeah. I remember one of my first photo shoots that I had to like manage on my own as an associate brand manager was at the Cruel office. You were the photographer.
I was. Yeah, that was the Mott's cocktail recipe shoot for like the book, I think maybe, or maybe for the website.
I don't even know what it was for. We were doing recipes.
All I remember was your birthday. We made you a birthday cake Caesar, which was probably one of the most bizarre things. And I remember before that, I think that was the first time we ever met.
Yeah.
And we were saying like, oh man, we're gonna have the client like looking over my shoulder this whole shoot. Like, what's going on? I'm like, you know what? Here, we're gonna make her a Caesar. It's going to be really strong. And then after that one Caesar, there's going to be no one's bothering the photographer.
I thought it was just a nice gesture.
No, we're not that nice. We're not that nice. It wasn't that genuine. No,
okay, so there's always an ulterior motive.
Always. There was a motive behind the Caesar.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a good shoot, though. That was a good shoot.
The photos turned out great.
Still show those ones off for sure.
Yeah, you did a great job. And I remember you came to the office before we had a meeting. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I remember.
So that was one of my first big like, hey, you got to figure this out on your own projects. Spent a couple years as an ABM and then eventually moved into a brand manager role there. I worked on some different brands at KDP or Keurig Dr. Pepper. So Mott's, Bai, Snapple, some of the ready to drink alcohol portfolio. And that's really where I discovered my passion for working in the alcohol industry, working on Mott's Clamato and Snapple Spiked. So as my next career move, that's really what I wanted to do. And that's what led me to Diageo.
Wonderful.
What's it like working on such large brands like Snapple and Mott's? Like, they're such household names. I feel like there's a pressure associated
Yeah, it definitely is pressure for sure. But it's a lot of fun. And I feel like the best thing one of the best things about it is when you explain to people what you do, because how often do you get that question? Oh, what do you do for a living?
Like
that's something you
all
get
the time, but we can't really explain it.
Yeah, a lot of people, they'll explain it and you're like, hey, I kind of understand, but usually it's some undercover software salesy, you know. But when you say you work for a brand like Mott's or Snapple, people can relate to that and they get excited. Yeah. So that's one of the, you know, more rewarding things.
The name drop is key. Yeah. People are like key and they're like, oh, I know that beverage.
Yeah, exactly. But it's also just fun to work on because, you know, you grow up seeing those brands or like they're in your everyday life. You go to the store, you see them on shelves. So it's just a full circle kind of thing.
Yeah, my mom and dad were super proud when I was like, I'm doing marketing for Mott's Colada.
Yeah, exactly, right?
We're gonna tell all our friends.
Yeah.
Well, it's also cool to see that you like have an impact on a brand that reaches so many people. So what you're doing is it will be interpreted. You'll kind of see how people interact with it, and I imagine that's both rewarding and I mean, for me personally, when we've done that kind of stuff, it's been interesting to just see how people respond to it and if it works or if it doesn't work, and then kind of learning from that too. When you hit such a wide audience, it's really informing. Yeah,
because sometimes you think you know the audience so well and you have it down pat, and then they just don't react the way you think they're going to.
Oh, you mean like white paper studies aren't always exactly how things are in real life? Jeez, damn, those data companies.
White paper studies.
But even anecdotally, like I feel like that's the hard thing in marketing sometimes is when you can relate to a product so much because you buy it and you're a consumer, you think everyone feels the same way about it or shops the same way as you do, and it's not.
I feel like we're both so guilty of that.
Oh, 100%.
We'll get in fights sometimes in meetings like, well, I think that I do this because I shop this way, and Dom's like, well, I shop this way, and I'm like, oh god, okay.
Like the data says that it's a male-dominated brand, so Julia.
So you're wrong
every time, No, but so is that kind of your favorite part, or like what is your favorite part of being a brand manager and being able to control a brand that, you know, so many people see?
Yeah, there's a lot of things I love about brand marketing. That's one of them. I feel like another part is that you get to use, you kind of alluded to it, but the left and right side of your brain. Like it's very analytical at most times and strategic, but you also get to get creative and working on the advertising and working with the agencies. So having that balance is great. And also the fact that every day is different. I know that sounds cliche, but in one day you could be working on innovation or PR or packaging or strategy or all of those things. So it's always different. It's dynamic. It's exciting. And there's always a challenge for every brand. Like even if you work on a brand for years, you can always find a new challenge or moving to a different brand. There's new challenges. So it's constant learning as well. And that's what keeps it exciting.
Cool. No, I love that. Yeah. I mean,
let's switch gears a little. Post-pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing we notice as an agency is just cutting marketing budgets. So, I mean, obviously this would affect your job and like you as well and how you interact with brands and agencies. And I feel like, how were you able to manage brands through COVID-19 and all of that and have everything differed with events?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't easy. And I feel like everyone was kind of learning together. Obviously, no one had been in that situation. But traditionally, the way it would work is from a marketing standpoint, like you plan everything so far in advance, like a year or a year and a half, sometimes longer, right? And you know what's happening and you can usually execute it. Like sometimes there's changes, but usually what you plan is what comes to fruition. And then COVID kind of turned that upside down. And now I feel like ever since the pandemic, things are constantly evolving because it's not only the pandemic now, it's like supply chain issues or other macroeconomic issues that impact business.
Shortage.
Sorry?
The aluminum shortage.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, you know, so I feel like we're going to be in this state for a while. So I really had to learn, and I feel like a lot of people did, how to be adaptable. Because, you put your heart and soul into these marketing activations. You guys do too.
For sure.
Being the agency, and then you just have to learn how to, you know, adapt with the changes.
I feel like alcohol probably did really well during the pandemic. I mean, I know cannabis sales were pretty good, and I know for like cigarettes, the cigarette industry saw the first year of equal sales, not declining sales, because vices became so much more important, right?
Yeah.
Not to compare alcohol, cannabis, and cigarettes, not exactly all the same thing, but I imagine that like a lot of people probably turned to alcohol during the pandemic, and it was more 100%. About changing your guys' strategy to like kind of deal with that and deal with the new channels that people were shopping in, right?
Yeah, well, I know a problem that a lot of brands had is, even though there was so much demand, like they couldn't keep up with the demand, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
So that was a big thing.
So many empty shelves. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a brand manager, I feel like you're always a general manager. Like you're really owning the business. You're involved from like supply chain to the traditional marketing to sales, everything. But I felt like I got way more into the weeds on the supply side through that whole experience, just because that was such a big issue.
There was less marketing stuff, less photo shoots to go to or events to attend and stuff like that. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, one of the reasons I personally wanted to have you on the podcast, I feel like we've had some similar experiences in the corporate world as women. I mean, I feel like we've made great strides in the past few years, but it often feels like impossible to break that glass ceiling, as they call it. I fucking hate that. But yeah, the glass ceiling, as they call it. But I feel like, how do you navigate the boys club, as they call it, especially in like such a dominated male space, like alcohol and stuff like that? Like, how do you navigate that? How do you deal with that? Have you had experiences with that?
Yeah, I would be lying if I said I cracked the code on that one. But I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work for companies that really make that a priority, which is amazing. But yeah, you're always going to encounter situations or groups of people that you have to work with where that can be a bit of a challenge. I don't know what the right answer is. I mean, like one thing that I've tried to do is gain their respect. So just, work hard, show what I'm capable of, and I find, they come around. But it can be tough. So I can relate. I mean, do you have any tips for me on that?
No, I just feel like when I started getting into actual work, like when my first job, remember I have this story. My mom always told me, she's like, you need to learn how to golf. Because she said not a lot of women know how to golf, and deals are always made on the golf course, and it's very rare that as a woman you're like invited to those things. So if you are, because you know how to golf, like you're immediately like in the boys club. And I was just kind of like great, but like
yeah,
really
that's funny because my parents used to say,
but you're an avid golfer, and I'm like,
okay, I wouldn't say
is that
avid.
why you learned how to golf?
I wouldn't say avid. My parents used to say something similar, not like, oh, you need to learn how to golf to be invited to those things, but like, oh, it would come in handy in the corporate world.
It's so true, though.
You're a pretty good golfer, though, Jules. Like, you're not bad.
I'm decent. I learned how to get better once I went on Dom's golf clubs. We determined my golf clubs were too big for me.
Julia
or too small.
Has women's clubs, and for some reason women's clubs are just shorter than men's clubs,
It's
which
insane.
I never really understood.
There's another analogy we can like.
Yeah, exactly. That works. That's actually very that illustrates the point.
I shoot better on Dom's
pretty
golf
well.
clubs.
Yeah,
there you go.
Hilarious.
You're just gonna have to get a pair of men's clubs.
Men's clubs. Yeah,
it's actually a great marketing program for TaylorMade. Just
great ad for TaylorMade. No, we're not.
Cue TaylorMade.
We're not shouting out any brands here, all right?
But yeah, I guess too. I feel like sometimes it's been difficult for me because there's a lack of female mentorship in the space. Like I have my mom, I'm super lucky. I have sisters and, but yeah, it's definitely a lack of female mentorship, and sometimes that's difficult. But did you have a mentor or someone that kind of guided you along the way?
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough that the teams that I've worked on, there's been a lot of female representation and mentors that have kind of guided me, which has been amazing. I met some great people through that. But actually, you just reminded me, before COVID, one of my girlfriends and her mom, who's worked in marketing for years, marketing and advertising, they started this whole networking community for women, both starting their career and who have been like seasoned in their career. And we would meet, I think it was like every few months, and like share stories, and you would be paired up with someone. It was such a great community that we started building, and then obviously COVID shut everything down. But I'm gonna tell her to start it back up again, and I'll let you know so
maybe
you can come.
Maybe we'll get her on the couch.
Yeah, honestly, it was an amazing, like it was just a great way to network and meet people, and and share stories and advice. So I think encouraging more of that definitely helps.
I feel like we recently had a female addition to our leadership team here at Cruel,
Okay.
and having been, shout out DB Danielle Bablich.
she's amazing.
That's a totally warranted shout out, by the way.
No, I'll allow that one.
Yeah, Mac allows it. But yeah, Danielle like has really helped to change the way that we just see the business as a whole, and also offering that support. I mean, I imagine that's probably been really refreshing for you, Jules, after years of dealing with the five of us, as the leadership team. And I've just seen the shift in even the way that we're able to like have more open discussions as a leadership team, but also just check our ideas. Every time we come up with a marketing campaign or come up with a creative idea, I'm tapping into my experience, my context throughout my life, and it's a male context, right? So, Jules, you've always been a great bouncing board for that for me, and just being like, hey, Dom, like, I know you love this logo, but like, it looks like a woman would never even come 10 feet from the, like, we
do have those conversations.
And it's nice to have an open relationship like that. And that's something that I've learned because I've, always had a lot of male collaborators, and having women in the room is refreshing. I mean, it seems like an obvious question, but like, why do you think it's so important for large corporations, especially, to continue to make sure that women are at the leadership level, at the executive level, where they can be that role model for the rest of the business, and be a role model not only for the people they work with directly, but for the women who come from all different positions in that company?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's important to have a diverse group of people at the leadership level, beyond, like male, female, all kinds of people. Just, it's different perspectives, is exactly what you said, right? Different perspectives to the table, different schools of thought, kind of considering everything. Because, like, that's something that I've learned in the corporate world, is sometimes these people who are making the big decisions don't consider everything, because they're not like living and breathing,
Of course,
some of the work that other people are doing. So the more diversity that you have at that level is only going to improve the decisions and the thinking there. So it's super important.
Yeah, no, it's talked about a lot these days, but I feel like it's not acted on a lot, right? Or not acted on as much as it should be. But
the idea of parity, and then it's like only enacted upon on the lower levels and like not on the higher levels.
It happens. It happens.
But what advice would you give to, the next generation of female leaders or young women?
Yeah. Honestly, I think advice to anyone trying to start their career or the next generation is, like, a couple things that I've really taken away that people told me when I was, graduating, but I didn't really realize how important they were until now, kind of looking back, is networking. I know it's so cliche, but it's a huge, huge thing. And it's not like a formal networking session that you need to attend and like, formal clothing. It's even networking amongst who you're going to school with or who you're working with. Like, so many of my friends that I even went to university with have helped each other get jobs or come into connection with each other through the working world, right? And like, you never know who you're going to run into or who's going to help you get a job or a client or whatever, right? So I would say that's huge. And on that same vein is, not burning bridges, because
That's
like
so
it
true.
is such a small world. I can't even believe
everyone comes back at the end of the day.
I feel like I'm still fairly young in my career, and the amount of people that have come around like twice, if not three times, in different scenarios or different jobs, like it's just
No, it's so true though. Like, even if you're just out with your friends, like sometimes that turns into a networking thing. Like, you can meet someone that you didn't know that you were going to meet that night or something like that. And just using that as opportunity always is really important for sure.
They might get you a job, or they might work at a place that can help. They can help you get you in, right? That's how I got my job now. I used to work with someone way back in the day. She works at the company I work at now, and she kind of helped me at least, get an interview. So, it's huge.
I think like the burning bridges thing is a good one, because I think at times too, there's been moments where I've had someone who, I've met in the past or networked with or whatever, and they've hit me up for a job, and it just hasn't worked out, and then I feel awkward about it, and then I'm like, oh, I can't talk to this person anymore, and like I feel like really weird about it. And then like a year later they'll come back and be like, oh, I got another one, what do you think about this one? And I'm like, oh man, I thought this person hated me, like, because I couldn't do that one job for them, right? And in my mind I was like, oh, the bridge was burned just because my rate was too high or something. But it's not always like that. It's not linear. It's people always need help, and if you're someone that can help them do what they got to do at their job or in their personal life or whatever, you'll kind of always stick in their head.
100%.
I mean, as long as you don't do something terrible.
It's a good experience. Then they'll always come back.
Yeah.
It's like boyfriends, you know?
Is that what I haven't had that experience, but okay.
They always come back.
I feel that. Well, let's talk a little bit about like work-life balance, because that's something that we talk about quite a bit here, something that we talk quite a bit about on the podcast as well, because it is so important. But again, another one of those things that a lot of people talk about, but not everyone always acts on. So
True.
what are some
Ourselves
tips?
at
Yeah,
times.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm saying this as we're here
Yes.
at what time?
Work-life balance?
But yeah,
Crazy.
what are some tips that you have, or some like maybe some strategies that you use just to try to separate or try to like put a wall up that allows you to have those two, separate spaces in your life?
Yeah, that's a really good topic. And I've definitely learned the hard way on that one. Because I'm someone who, always wants to work hard, do a good job, like say yes to everything, hate saying
same.
no, like you want to do what you can for the team.
Like, I feel bad like messaging Cass at 8 p.m. She responds me at 9. I'm like, oh God, what have I done?
Well, especially like when you care about what you're doing, like that comes naturally, right? But then like you can push yourself to a breaking point, and I've experienced that. Which like was a huge learning for me, and I will never let myself get there again. So like I had to learn how to instill certain principles to avoid that. But I think a big thing, like the working from home, it's so easy to fall into that trap, right?
Yeah, there's no boundaries. Yeah.
No,
You're working
because
whenever.
I find like so often for me, it's like, oh yeah, I could go downstairs and take my hour lunch, or I could just get this done and then save 5 minutes for lunch. Then you're rushing back to a meeting or something. So I think what I've tried to do is really put in that boundary. Like I started to block off in my calendar 12 to 1 lunch. So then the reminder comes up. So if you're working on something, it's like, okay, I got to stop, step away. I try and do like a Pilates workout or go for a walk, like even watch TV for a little bit just to like separate. And then it's the same thing at 5 o'clock, right? Like obviously, no job is 9 to 5. There's times where you need to, work extra hours, but trying your best to put that boundary. If you don't need to work after 5, like stepping away and okay, I can get this done tomorrow. It sounds so simple, but it's so easier said than done. And I think you guys can relate to that.
One thing that I do is on my internal calendar, I'll put lunch, and then on the external calendar, I'll put like doctor's appointment. So then no one's booking me for anything.
Bothering
You can be as like
That's
straightforward as Skylar when he had his like 12 to 1 meditation. Don't talk to me.
That's actually smart.
Yeah.
It's actually fair, because like I'm not going to interfere with that.
To be fair, you know what? Say what you will about the meditation. I do that especially when I'm working from home.
I'm not going to message someone during that time. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
Like,
No, but it really does help, and it's a good way to try to block off or just create a bit of a rift in your day where you're not totally zoned in to work the whole time. You just create a bit of that blockage. Like even when I'll eat lunch, like sometimes I'll sit at my desk and work, but other times I'll just like listen to a podcast or like watch a YouTube video just to try to have something where I'm like, just give my brain like a little bit of that break. Yeah.
I think another thing that's big too that helps is like making plans after work, whether it's like an appointment or hanging out with friends or whatever. Because as silly as it sounds, it makes you step away because you're like, I got to go do something, right?
Well, so you've had like a bunch of huge milestones in the past year. So buying a house, getting engaged.
Shout out.
How can you manage it all? Like that's a lot going on. Like how do you kind of compartmentalize and manage all of that?
I know when you say it, it sounds like a lot, but honestly, it's all like amazing stuff that's happening.
Yeah, it's all good
it's
things.
enjoyable. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure out how I'm managing it.
Like I'm still currently figuring it
started
out.
wedding planning
yet. No, we're definitely like in the deep with the wedding planning.
You got it.
We haven't moved yet. We have a few more weeks for that. So I'm trying to like do wedding planning as much as possible because I know the moving is gonna like take up a lot of my time.
Yeah.
Heading into the holidays too, it's always crazy. But yeah, I mean, I just try and use what time I have to be productive. So like even in the car, if I'm driving home from the office, I'll like take a call with a vendor, like have a conversation, just like try and use my time as efficiently as possible.
I do like the car time is like my time to catch up with family.
Car caller.
Oh, I call in the car all the time because I have like
I do too.
I commute like 40 minutes to an hour most days.
But Dom's also like a scary driver, so like he'll be on the phone and then he'll be like, "Oh fuck," and then be like, "Oh sorry, what was that?" Like,
I have a rule: I don't get mad at traffic or parking.
That's a lie.
Both of those are lies.
How do you?
That's a fat lie.
How do you do that?
Last time I was in your car, someone almost T-boned me.
I said it was a rule. I didn't say I didn't break it.
Dom, there's no lying on the podcast, man.
I do have a
no lying
speeding
on the
ticket
podcast.
court date tomorrow.
Hey. And
It's okay,
case in
I have
point.
one of
It's
those,
a real, it's a real court date, not a
in point.
fake meeting.
Oh, really?
12 to 1.
Yeah, it's actually
court date.
from 2020, and it wasn't too bad, but it was my first speeding ticket ever. So I'm going to court. I'm handling
Everything's
I'm
gonna be
handling
fine.
it like an adult. You know, I'm doing it proper. But yeah, no, the car time for me is like I'll call my grandparents, I'll call my brother, I'll just try to like catch up with people. And I can't remember who it was. One of my family members roasted me on it. They're like, "You just call me when you're in the car, eh?
'Cause
When
you're bored."
when you have nothing else to do, eh? Like that's the only
Yes.
time you'll call me." I'm like, "No, this is my like
is my quiet
prescribed time for you."
time, yeah.
Like, yeah.
But it's usually a good time too because it's after work. Like you know
Yeah.
people are around,
Yeah,
right? If
exactly,
you call
yeah.
someone during the day, like they're usually
Yeah, they're busy. Yeah, exactly. But it's nice. I'm driving. It keeps me calm, you know, behind the wheel. Yeah.
Keeps them calm.
Apparently, it's something I
Oh
need
my
to work
God,
on.
You do.
know? Yeah, shit.
Well,
I can't see you even getting mad though.
You haven't been in the car with me.
Yeah,
Yes,
like
you
Dom's
don't
always
wanna
so
see
chill,
it. He's
smiley.
so not like mad that when it does come out, you're just like, oof,
Yeah.
you want to be far away from
Oh,
that.
Yeah,
okay.
mostly just the car. You know, it's Toronto traffic these days. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Shout out
Sorry,
the.
I just want to point out that we started this conversation by you saying that you don't get mad at traffic.
No.
And it's turned into this.
I said that I have a rule that I don't get mad in traffic or parking. Parking, I don't get mad at. I break the rule, okay? I break the rule. Rules are meant to be broken.
I'm just calling it out, man.
We-
We've moved on from the marketing podcast
Yeah,
to
we're now talking about parking
anger
and
management
traffic.
with Dom.
The
Hi,
lakeshore
Dom.
construction is
And-
insane. If they could figure out the lakeshore construction, it's absolutely fucked. It's totally, you're ruining my life.
Put the ramp back
Please
on,
put the
you
ramp back on the gardener. Everyone in the East End hates you. God damn it.
Anyway,
but
anyways, that seems like
That
a
seems
natural,
like the natural
way to
segue.
end
As I go to commute home, yeah, I
As
can
I
think
go to
about
commute home.
lament on this now.
But thank you so much, Cass. Honestly, I feel like this was extremely insightful, and a
Yeah.
lot of people are going to be really excited to listen to this, as I have been trying to get you on here for years. So thanks for finally blessing us.
Yeah, thank you for
Oh
coming
my
your
on.
time.
Guys, anytime. Like I said, I always love coming to the Cruel office. You guys
We
are
love
the
when you
best
come
over
here,
here.
too.
So thanks for having me.
Yeah, and your
course.
story is really inspiring too, and I think that seeing someone who's been able to, you know, progress upward at a company, but then also, you know, move laterally to another equally strong and impressive business is really cool, and I think you should be very proud of that, and you're certainly a pleasure to work with on this end. So
Aw.
yeah,
Thanks, guys.
thanks again.
Well, yeah, thanks,
and
everyone.
yeah, for everyone who's watching, this has
Two
been
of you left.
for the two of you that left. This has been the podcast, and we'll see you next time.